The living room pulsed with conversation and laughter, the kind of comfortable chaos that comes from gathering people who've known each other for years. I stood near the kitchen island, nursing a beer and half listening to David's story about his disastrous attempt at home renovation, when I realized I hadn't seen my wife in a while. It wasn't unusual for us to drift apart at parties. We'd always been comfortable giving each other space, mingling separately before reconvening to share the evening's best stories on the drive home. But something nagged at me as I scanned the room. The last time I'd seen her, she'd been on her third glass of wine, or was it her fourth? She rarely drank that much. "Have you seen my wife?" I asked David, interrupting his tale of accidentally demolishing a load-bearing wall. He glanced around, then shook his head. "Not in the last 20 minutes or so. Check the deck." I made my way through the crowd, nodding at familiar faces, but she wasn't on the deck. Not in the dining room either. The bathroom door was open, the light off. A small knot of worry began forming in my stomach. I checked my phone, no messages. "She went outside, I think," offered Rachel, one of my wife's colleagues, as I passed through the hallway. Something in her tone made me pause. Her smile seemed forced, sympathetic in a way that didn't match the casual atmosphere. "Outside? When?" "Maybe 30 minutes ago." Rachel touched my arm briefly. "I'm sure she's fine. Just getting some air." But her eyes told a different story. There was pity there, or concern, or something I couldn't quite name. The knot in my stomach tightened. I headed for the front door, weaving past small clusters of guests. That's when I noticed it, the subtle shift in energy as I passed. Conversations didn't exactly stop, but they stuttered. Eyes followed me with uncomfortable awareness. Sarah from my wife's book club gave me a sad smile. Tom, our neighbor, clasped my shoulder as I passed, a gesture of solidarity that made no sense in context. What the hell was going on? The cool autumn air hit my face as I stepped onto the front porch. The street was quiet, lined with cars reflecting the streetlights. And there, sitting on the curb 2 houses down, I saw her. My wife, her heels beside her, head in her hands. Relief and confusion warred inside me as I approached. "Hey," I called softly. "You okay?" She looked up, and I saw that her makeup was smudged, eyes red. She'd been crying. My heart clenched. "Oh," she said, her voice thick. "When did you come out?" "Just now. I was looking for you." I sat down beside her on the curb, the concrete cold through my jeans. "What's wrong? What happened?" She stared at me for a long moment, her expression confused. "Nothing happened. I just needed some air. It was hot in there." "You've been crying." "Have I?" She touched her face, seeming surprised by the wetness there. "I guess I have. I think I had too much wine." She laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Way too much wine." I put my arm around her shoulders. "Do you want to go home?" "Not yet." She leaned against me. "Let's just sit here for a minute." We sat in silence, and I tried to make sense of what I'd witnessed inside. The careful looks, the sympathy, Rachel's concern. Something had happened while my wife was gone, something that everyone at that party knew except me. "Did something happen in there?" I finally asked. "Before you came outside?" She turned to look at me, her eyes unfocused in the way that comes with too much alcohol. "Like what?" "I don't know. People are acting strange." "Strange how?" I struggled to articulate it. "Like they feel sorry for me. Like something happened that I should know about." She frowned, genuinely confused. "I have no idea what you're talking about. Can we just go back inside? I'm cold." As we walked back toward the house, her arm linked through mine for balance, I couldn't shake the feeling that the evening had shifted on some fundamental axis. And whatever had changed, I was the only one who didn't understand why. The moment we walked back into the party, I felt it again, that collective awareness, like everyone was pretending not to watch us. My wife headed straight for the kitchen, mumbling something about needing water, leaving me standing awkwardly in the entrance to the living room. "Hey, man." It was James, my college roommate and the host of this gathering. He guided me toward the quieter corner near the bookshelf, his hand firm on my elbow. "Can we talk for a second?" "What's going on, James?" "Everyone's acting like someone died." He ran his hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I'd known for 15 years. "Look, I don't know how much you know, but your wife had a bit of a moment earlier, before she went outside." My chest tightened. What kind of moment? "She was talking to a group of us, Rachel, Tom, the Johnsons, a few others. At first it seemed normal, just conversation, but then—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "She got emotional. Started talking about work, about stress, about feeling like she was drowning." I stared at him. My wife was a marketing director at a mid-sized firm, a position she'd worked years to achieve. She came home tired sometimes, sure, but drowning? She'd never used that word. "She said she's been working until midnight most nights," James continued. "That she hasn't told you because she didn't want you to worry. Something about a major account that's falling apart and it potentially being her fault." The information hit me like cold water. Midnight? I thought she'd been coming to bed at the same time as me. But then I remembered, I'd been falling asleep earlier lately, exhausted from my own long days. Had she been sneaking back to her laptop after I was unconscious? What else? I asked, dreading the answer. James shifted uncomfortably. "She talked about feeling unsupported. Not by you specifically, at least, I don't think she meant it that way. But she started crying, saying she felt alone in handling everything. The house, her job, her mother's health issues." "Her mother?" I interrupted. "What health issues?" The pity in his eyes was unmistakable. "You didn't know. She said her mom had some concerning test results a few weeks ago. They're running more tests." I felt like the ground was tilting beneath me. My mother-in-law had health concerns, and I didn't know. My wife was working herself to exhaustion, and I'd been oblivious? What kind of husband was I? "There's more," James said quietly. "She mentioned that sometimes she feels invisible. That she could disappear and wasn't sure anyone would really notice." The words cut deep. I wanted to protest, to say that of course I'd notice, but the evidence suggested otherwise. I hadn't noticed she was working until midnight. Hadn't noticed she was carrying the weight of her mother's health scare. Hadn't noticed that my partner, my wife, was silently struggling. How much did she have to drink? I asked. Maybe 4 glasses of wine? Over the course of 2 hours. Enough to lower her inhibitions, but... He trailed off. "Look, I don't think she was making things up. I think the alcohol just let out things she's been holding in." I nodded slowly, processing. In vino veritas, in wine, there is truth. The ancient saying felt painfully relevant. Where is she now? Kitchen, last I saw. Rachel was getting her some water and crackers. I found her sitting at the kitchen table, Rachel hovering nearby with a concerned expression. My wife looked small somehow, diminished, her usually confident posture collapsed into something hunched and defensive. "Hey," I said softly, sitting across from her. Rachel took the hint and melted away. "I think I'm drunk," my wife said, attempting a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I shouldn't have had that last glass. James told me you got upset earlier. That you were talking about work." Her face went carefully blank. "Did I? I don't really remember." "You don't remember talking about your job? About working late?" She rubbed her temples. "Everything's kind of fuzzy. I remember being hot, and people were talking, and then, I think I came outside? The timeline's all blurry." I leaned forward, taking her hands. They were cold despite the warmth of the house. "Why didn't you tell me things were so bad at work? Why didn't you tell me about your mom?" Confusion crossed her face, then something like fear. "What are you talking about? What did I say?" "You really don't remember?" "I remember drinking too much wine and feeling overwhelmed and hot. I remember needing air. But I don't." She pulled her hands away, wrapping her arms around herself. What did I tell people? Looking at her, vulnerable, confused, clearly distressed, I realized this conversation couldn't happen here, surrounded by our friends and their knowing looks. Whatever my wife had revealed, whatever had been building beneath the surface of our marriage, it deserved privacy. Let's go home, I said. We can talk there. She nodded gratefully, but as we gathered our things and made our goodbyes, I caught her glancing around the room with growing horror, as if trying to piece together a crime she couldn't remember committing. Sunlight streamed through the bedroom curtains with aggressive cheerfulness, and I heard my wife groan beside me. She was awake, one arm thrown over her eyes, her body radiating the kind of stillness that comes with a serious hangover. How are you feeling? I asked, propping myself up on one elbow. Like I drank a bottle of regret. Her voice was hoarse. Can you close those curtains more? I got up and adjusted them, dimming the room to a more forgiving twilight. When I returned to bed, she was sitting up, looking miserable and embarrassed in equal measure. I'm sorry about last night, she said. I don't usually drink like that. I know. I sat beside her, not quite touching. The space between us felt charged with everything unsaid. Do you remember anything from the party? She closed her eyes, thinking. Bits and pieces. I remember talking to Rachel and Tom. I remember feeling really hot and anxious. I remember going outside and you finding me. She opened her eyes, looking at me with genuine distress. But there are gaps. Big ones. Did I do something terrible? You didn't do anything terrible, I assured her. But you said some things. Important things. Her face paled. What kind of things? I took a breath, trying to figure out how to approach this. You talked about work. About how stressed you've been, how you've been working until midnight most nights. Is that true? She looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because. She stopped, searching for words. Because you have your own stress with your job, and I didn't want to add to it. And because saying it out loud makes it feel more real, more overwhelming. If I just kept pushing through, I thought I could handle it. What's happening at work? She sighed, a sound heavy with exhaustion. The Morrison account. You remember, the one I landed 6 months ago? It's falling apart. They're unhappy with the campaign results, threatening to pull their contract. If I lose them, it's millions in revenue, and it's my fault. I'm the account lead. I've been trying to fix it, working late, reworking strategies, but nothing's working and I'm terrified I'm going to get fired. The words poured out of her now, as if a dam had broken. And then there's the team restructuring my boss has been hinting at. Budget cuts. Layoffs. I might be let go anyway, regardless of Morrison, and we have the mortgage and your student loans and my mom. She stopped abruptly, and I saw tears starting to form. What about your mom? I asked gently. She had a mammogram 3 weeks ago. They found something. Not definitely cancer, but concerning enough that they scheduled a biopsy. She gets the results this week. Her voice cracked. And she asked me not to tell anyone until we knew for sure, including you, because she didn't want people worrying for nothing. So I've been sitting on that information, terrified, trying to pretend everything's fine while I imagine the worst possible outcomes. I reached for her hand, and this time she let me take it. God, honey, why carry all of this alone? Because that's what I do, she said simply. I'm the one who handles things. My mom's health, my career, making sure the bills get paid, keeping the house running. You contribute, I'm not saying you don't, but the mental load, the remembering, the organizing, the worrying, that's on me. It's always been on me. The truth of her words stung because I couldn't deny them. I paid bills when she reminded me. I did chores when she asked. But did I proactively notice what needed doing? Did I track her mother's doctor appointments or remember when the HOA fees were due? Did I see the weight she was carrying, or had I been comfortably oblivious? I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. I'm sorry I haven't been paying attention. I'm sorry I let you shoulder all of this alone. She squeezed my hand. It's not all your fault. I'm terrible at asking for help. I tell myself I can handle everything, and then I bury my feelings until they come exploding out at inappropriate moments. Like apparently at parties after too much wine. What else did I say last night? She asked after a moment. James mentioned you talked to him. You said you felt invisible sometimes. That you felt unsupported. She winced. I'm sure that went over well with everyone. Is it true though? Do you feel that way? She was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes, she admitted. Not always, and not because you're intentionally neglectful. But yes, sometimes I feel like I'm running parallel to my own life instead of living it. Like I'm checking boxes, good wife, good daughter, good employee, without anyone actually seeing me. The real me, with all my fears and stress and exhaustion. I pulled her close, and she came willingly, tucking her head against my chest. I see you, I said into her hair. Or I want to. I need you to help me see you better. Which means you need to tell me things, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I'll try, she whispered. I promise I'll try. We sat like that for a while, holding each other in the dim room, and I felt something shifting between us. Not fixed, there was too much to unpack for a single conversation to solve everything, but acknowledged. The invisible wall my wife had been building, brick by brick, secret by secret, had finally been named. By afternoon, after showers and coffee and the kind of greasy breakfast that helps with hangovers, we were sitting at the kitchen table with my wife's laptop open between us. She'd been dreading this part, piecing together exactly what had happened at the party, filling in the gaps her memory had left blank. Maybe we don't need to know every detail, she said, hesitating over her phone where several concerned texts from Rachel and others waited. Maybe it's better to just move forward. I think we need to know, I said gently. Not to embarrass you or make you feel worse, but because whatever you said came from a real place. Even if you don't remember saying it, you felt it. And I need to understand. She nodded reluctantly and opened Rachel's text thread. Okay. Let's see how bad the damage is. Rachel had written, Hey hun, just checking in after last night. You seemed really overwhelmed. I'm here if you need to talk. No judgment. We all have moments. Call me. My wife stared at the message. I must have really broken down. Rachel said you were talking about work stress, your mom, feeling unsupported. But she seemed concerned, not judgmental. That's something, at least. She scrolled through other messages. Tom had sent something similar, as had the Johnsons. All checking in, all offering support. No one seemed angry or scandalized, just worried. I think I need to call Rachel, my wife said finally. She was there for the whole thing. She can tell me what actually happened. She put the phone on speaker, and Rachel answered on the second ring. Oh honey, how are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck made of wine, my wife said with a weak laugh. Rachel, I need you to tell me what happened last night. I don't remember much after my third glass, and apparently I said some things. There was a pause. Are you sure you want to know? Sometimes maybe it's better to just. I need to know. Please. Rachel sighed. Okay. Well, you were in the kitchen with me, Tom, the Johnsons, and a few others. We were talking about work. You know how these conversations go. Someone mentioned a stressful project, and you kind of jumped in. Started talking about the Morrison account situation. What did I say exactly? My wife asked, gripping my hand under the table. You said it was falling apart, that you were terrified of being fired, that you'd been working yourself to exhaustion trying to fix it. You were crying, which honestly made everyone uncomfortable at first because you're usually so composed. But then you just kept talking, like you couldn't stop. I watched my wife's face cycle through emotions, embarrassment, distress, resignation. You talked about your mom's health scare, Rachel continued. About feeling like you were drowning under the weight of everything. And then. She hesitated. You said something about feeling invisible. That you felt like you could disappear and nobody would notice because you were just the person who kept everything running in the background. My wife closed her eyes, and I saw tears leaking from beneath her lids. But here's the thing, Rachel said, her voice warm. Nobody thought less of you. Everyone was concerned. Sarah actually said afterward that she'd felt the exact same way during her own career crisis last year. Tom said he wished more people would be honest about how hard they're struggling instead of pretending everything's fine all the time. Really? My wife asked, her voice small. Really? You were vulnerable and honest, and if anything, people respected that. The only person judging you right now is you. After they hung up, my wife sat quietly, processing. I feel mortified, she finally said. I can't believe I spilled everything like that in front of everyone. But do you feel relieved at all? I asked. Even a little. She considered this. Maybe. It's hard to tell under all the embarrassment. But Rachel said people understood. That they'd felt the same way. She looked at me. Do you think that's true? Or is she just being nice? I think it's true. I think a lot of people are struggling with the same things, they just don't talk about it. You did, even if it wasn't exactly how you would have chosen to do it. She laughed shakily. Note to self, emotional revelations and 4 glasses of wine don't mix. Or maybe, I suggested carefully, the wine just let you say things you needed to say but didn't know how. Obviously that's not the ideal method, but maybe it's not entirely bad that it happened. Are you suggesting my drunken breakdown was therapeutic? I'm suggesting that you've been holding too much inside for too long, and it had to come out somehow. Better at a party among friends than... I trailed off, not wanting to finish that thought. Better at a party than in a hospital after a breakdown. Better in a moment of wine-loosened inhibitions than never at all, letting resentment and exhaustion build until our marriage cracked under the weight. She seemed to understand what I wasn't saying. I've been doing that my whole life, she said quietly. Holding things in. Being the strong one, the capable one, the one who doesn't need help. My mom raised me that way, she had to, after my dad left. It was just the 2 of us, and she worked 2 jobs, and I learned early that asking for help was a burden. That the only way to survive was to handle everything yourself. But you don't have to anymore, I said. You have me. You're not alone. I know that intellectually. But emotionally, it's like there's still this voice in my head saying that needing support makes me weak. 3 days later, we were back at James's house, not for a party this time, but for an intentional gathering. My wife had been nervous about returning so soon, worried about facing everyone after her breakdown. But I'd convinced her that showing up, acknowledging what happened, and moving forward was better than hiding. James opened the door with a warm smile. Hey, you two. Thanks for coming. It was just the core group this time, James and his wife, Rachel and her partner, Tom and his boyfriend, the Johnsons. People who'd been at the party, who'd witnessed my wife's moment of crisis. People who cared about us. My wife had prepared a small speech, and as everyone settled in the living room with coffee and tea, she stood up, her hands trembling slightly. I wanted to talk about what happened at the party, she began. To apologize for making everyone uncomfortable with my breakdown. You don't need to apologize, Sarah Johnson interrupted gently. Really? Let me finish, my wife said with a small smile. I need to say this. I'm sorry for the awkwardness, but I'm also realizing that maybe it needed to happen. I've been carrying too much alone for too long, and the wine just lowered my barriers enough to let the truth out. She glanced at me, and I gave her an encouraging nod. My husband and I have been talking a lot over the past few days. About communication, about partnership, about asking for help. And I realized that part of my problem is that I've never been good at being vulnerable, even with people I trust. She looked around the room. Rachel, you told me that people understood, that some of you had been through similar things. I think I need to start believing that. Believing that it's okay to not have it all together, that admitting struggle doesn't make me weak. It makes you human, Tom said. And honestly, relatable as hell. There were murmurs of agreement around the room. So I wanted to thank you all for not judging me, my wife continued. And to let you know that we're working on things. I'm working on things. Starting with actually letting my husband help me instead of pretending I can handle everything alone. When she sat back down beside me, I took her hand. Rachel started sharing her own story of career stress and breakdown, and gradually, the conversation opened up. Tom talked about his anxiety. Sarah discussed her struggles with her teenager. James admitted that he and his wife had been in marriage counseling last year. It struck me how rare these honest conversations were. How much time we all spent curating perfect versions of ourselves, the successful career, the happy marriage, the well-managed life, while secretly struggling with the same fears and doubts. My wife's wine-fueled honesty had accidentally given everyone permission to be real. Later, as we drove home, my wife was quiet but seemed lighter somehow. That went better than I expected, she finally said. Much better. I think people appreciated you being honest. I have a therapy appointment scheduled for next week, she said suddenly. I found someone who specializes in stress management and anxiety. I think I need professional help learning how to ask for help, if that makes sense. Pride swelled in my chest. That makes perfect sense. I'm proud of you. And I talked to my boss today. Told her about the Morrison situation, about how stressed I've been. She was actually understanding. Said the company has resources I can access, that the account issues aren't all on me, that there are factors outside my control. She's bringing in someone to help with the workload. That's amazing. I also called my mom. Told her that keeping health scares secret doesn't protect anyone. It just makes me carry the worry alone. She got her biopsy results back today. Actually, it's not cancer. Just a benign cyst. But if she'd told me sooner, I could have supported her instead of spending 3 weeks imagining the worst. I reached over and squeezed her knee. How do you feel? Exhausted, she admitted. Emotionally wrung out. But also, relieved. Like I've been holding my breath for months and I'm finally letting it out. When we got home, we made dinner together, actually together, not me watching TV while she cooked. We talked about her therapy appointment, about my own habit of zoning out instead of checking in, about practical ways to share the mental load more equitably. It wasn't a complete solution. That would take time, consistent effort, behavior changes that wouldn't happen overnight. But it was a start. That night, as we lay in bed, my wife turned to me. Thank you for not making me feel crazy or dramatic about all this. You're not crazy or dramatic. You're overwhelmed, and that's completely understandable given everything you've been dealing with. The party was mortifying, she said. But maybe it was also necessary. Like the universe forcing me to stop pretending everything was fine. Maybe the universe works in mysterious ways, I agreed. Even if those ways involve too much wine and emotional confessions to our friends. She laughed, and it sounded genuine. Next party, I'm sticking to 2 glasses. Maximum. Deal. And next party, I'll pay better attention. To you, to how you're doing, to the signs that you're struggling. We're going to be okay, she said, and it wasn't a question. We're going to be better than okay, I replied. Because now we're actually talking. Actually seeing each other. She moved closer, resting her head on my chest, and I wrapped my arms around her. Outside, I could hear the wind in the trees, the distant sound of traffic. Inside, in our bedroom, in our marriage, something had shifted. The walls my wife had built around her stress and fear had come down, messily, awkwardly, but down nonetheless. And in their place, slowly, we were building something better. A partnership based not on the illusion of having everything together, but on the honest reality of facing life's challenges together. It wouldn't always be easy. There would be setbacks, moments when old patterns crept back in. But we'd taken the first crucial step, acknowledging the truth and committing to change. As I felt her breathing slow into sleep, I made a silent promise to both of us. No more invisibility. No more parallel lives. From now on, we'd face everything together, the stress, the fear, the joy, the mundane daily struggles. Together, visible to each other, partners in the fullest sense of the word. The party breakdown had been a crisis, yes. But it had also been a breakthrough. And sometimes, I realized, those two things are exactly the same.